So we're studying Masechet Ketubot. That much I'm pretty sure of. And we recorded the previous classes, so I'm not going to go over what we studied then. But I do want to say that, again, this is a long sugya, and I am mapping out the sugya. I'm mapping it out. And basically, the way the sugya works is that there are a series of baraitot, or well, let me put it this way. It starts, each part ends with the question, which leads into the baraita for the next part, and then you have the baraita in the next part. And then you have an analysis of that baraita, and then you have questions. And then the ending of that part also is leading into a baraita. So for example, let me just, rather than speak in the abstract, let me show you how the sugya works. It starts on Gimel Amud Aleph with Rav Shemuel Bar Yitzchak. And as I said last time, that's a peticha to the sugya. So, yeah, if you can mute your microphones, please. I can't mute. I have to mute. Okay, perfect. So, yeah. So basically, we started out with the peticha, the statement of Rav Shemuel Bar Yitzchak, and then we end with the question, "Mai shakedu?" Right? That's how the peticha ends, and that leads to the Tanya. So that's the next part. So the next part is the beraita of shakedu, and then that part we have a series of comments, and we end up with also. One second. If you're going to Gimel Amud Bet, right. And then we have at the bottom of Gimel Amud Bet, we have Ibayit Emma, Mai Mechamat. That's the ending of that part. And then we have Kitanya, and then we have the next part. So you see how there's always a segue where one part ends with a reference to the baraita, which will be analyzed in the next part, right? So we have Kitanya, and we did this baraita last time as well, with the laws of Avelut. And then if you continue forward in the Gemara, now we're already Daf Daled Amud Aleph. We had a similar ending where Rav Chisda says, "Eki mishkahat la, amar Rav Asher kerun mata mahseya de mifka miklach umafka mikvar." You see, and that's the next part. So you see how you have a series of parts, starting with the peticha, and then you go, and now the allusion to baraita, questions, notes, allusion to baraita, questions, notes, allusion to baraita. So we're up to Tanya Kevat Rav Chisda. And I think last time we did this baraita. Let's start from here. Let's start from Tanya Kevat Rav Chisda. All right. So we're in Daf Dalet. Or actually, I think we did this last time. Hold on one second. Well, yeah, we're going to do it anyway because we need to kind of.
We went to Benkach, Molibol, לא בערב שבת ולא במוצאי שבת.
Yeah, that's right. So let's start with the baraita. You are correct, Shemuel. Let's start with the baraita, just so we can kind of replug ourselves in. Okay, so Tanya, so Daf Daled Amud Aleph, and as I said, I'm going to map out the entire sugya. But in the meantime, I wanted to give you the general signposts in the sugya, so you get a sense of how the sugya works. Okay, every sugya has its own particular rhythm, and the rhythm in this sugya is as I described it. So let's now go to do me a favor, fill this up with water. Okay, all right. So we're going to read now Tanya Kevate de Rav Chisda. Tanya Kevate de Rav Chisda. הרי שהייתה פיתו אפויה וטבחו טבוח ועיינו מזוג ונתן מים על גבי בשר ומת אביו של חתן או אמא של כלה מכניסין את המת לחדר ואת החתן ואת הכלה לחופה. So this beraita, it's similar in certain respects to the previous baraita, the one that was brought at the bottom of Gimel Amud Bet. But here we have that additional detail, V'natan mayim al gabei basar. You see? We studied this last week, but again, I just want to kind of plug us all in, including myself, since I was dealing with some other matters. So, V'natan mayim al gabei basar, right? That's why we're bringing this baraita. And that's the Tanya Kebatehe de Rav Chisda, because Rav Chisda said, Lo shanu ela shenatan mayim al gabei basar. Aval lo natan mayim al gabei basar mizdaben, right? That's what we said. Now, also, you have a place? I can help you. You can give me the thing. It's Dalet Amud Aleph here. Let me show you. Tanya Kebatehe Rav Chisda. Yeah?
Yeah.
Here it is. Right here, Tanya. Okay? Now, and just I just got to repeat this point because it was such a good point. You notice that when Harambam brings this law, and I said this last week, but I'm going to say it again because it's so fundamental. Harambam brings the law and structures the law in the Mishneh Torah as per the statement of Rav Chisda, and not as per the Baraita. And what I learned from my father, alav shalom, was that not every, even if you have an authoritative baraita, let's say the Sifra, so the Sifra de Berav, or you have the Sifre of Rabbi Shimon, not every halakha brought, by halakha I mean baraita, not every baraita brought in one of these official books is automatically becomes the law. It only becomes the law, meaning the halakha kivuah or halakha pesuka, rather, it only becomes halakha pesuka if the Gemara decides that it's halakha pesuka. You understand? It's a really fundamental point. If it wasn't for Rav Chisda saying lo shanu ela shenatan mayim al gabei basar, it would not be the halakha, right? So that's really an important. It's really an important point to be aware of. It's almost like Rav Chisda is the one who validates the baraita. It's not that the baraita validates Rav Chisda. It's that Rav Chisda validates the baraita. Right. So that's an important point. And people are in the habit of, so you see this all the time. And maybe I'll just a slight digression because it's fundamental to understanding the way halakha works. People love quoting things. People are quoting, so they quote. People quote. Even if you have something authoritative, like I said, like the Sifra, like the Sifre, like to a certain extent the Mechilta, like the Tosefta, these are authoritative collections of Baraita. You can't just quote it. Quoting a Baraita doesn't mean that the halacha is so, right? It's so important. People quote the Zohar. Oh, the Zohar says this. Okay, I mean, there's many, but put the issues on the side. I'm not talking about, I know people say the Zohar was written then, and okay, no problem, fine. But it's not the issue. That's not the issue. The issue with the Zohar is not who wrote the Zohar. It wasn't written by Rabbi Shimon Yochai, that we know. It could not have been written by Rabbi Shimon Yochai because the language of the Zohar is not the Aramaic that was spoken there. So that's just a historical fact. Whether you love the Zohar or for some reason you dislike the Zohar, it doesn't matter. It wasn't written by Rabbi Shimon Yochai. But let's say the Zohar is as authoritative as the Tosefta. Okay, let's say, for argument's sake, assuming argumento. Just quoting the Zohar on its own has no halachic validity. The halachic validity is that the Bedin HaGadol, as represented in the Gemara, quotes the source and makes Pesach like the source. But for that fact, the source would not have halachic validity. Again, it is a really important point. People say you can't put the tefillin on Chol HaMoed because the Zohar says so. But that's not proper Pesach halacha. That's just not the way to make Pesach halacha. They quote a Gemara. The Gemara says this. I mean, okay, very nice. The Gemara is wonderful. We without the Gemara we can't live. But you can't just quote a Gemara. You have to quote a Gemara which the halacha is like the Gemara, right? And not every sugya the halacha is like the Gemara. There's a Gemara that says you can't speak to somebody who had vegetables in the morning. What, do we make halacha like that? Is that the halacha, right? So I'm just wanted to use this point of Rav Chisda to illustrate that. All right, and again, listen to last week's tape because we went into greater depth in analyzing the structure of the statement of Rav Chisda versus the structure of the Baraita, and you will see there that Harambam chose the structure of Rav Chisda over the structure of Baraita precisely to highlight that the reason he's making halacha is not because of the Baraita, it's because of Rav Chisda. You understand? So let's okay. So that's now we're kind of plugged in. So let's read the Baraita now. I'm going to read it again. Aiki, read it. Tanya kevatei de Rav Chisda.
תנא כבתי דרב חסדא, הרי שהייתה פיתו אפויה.
Okay, so again, he prepared for the wedding. Pito afuya, the bread is baked.
וטבחו טבוח.
He slaughtered the animal.
ואינו מזוג.
Right, no refrigeration, so that meat is all going to get spoiled if they don't eat it. And the wine is mazug, right? You have to prepare the wine, you take it out of the barrel. It's very concentrated. You put water according to the taste that you want, and you dilute it.
ונתן מים על גבי בשר ומת אביו.
And that was a magic detail, or the essential detail that we were looking for. Natan mayim al gabe basar, you already begun to prepare the meat. So you can't sell meat that you already prepared. I mean, a butcher can sell meat of a slaughtered animal, but once natan mayim al gabe basar, I mean, that's it. Nobody's buying that meat anymore, right?
ומת אביו של חתן ואימה של כלה.
של כלה.
של כלה.
Right, because kala means the bride. Kala means destruction, right? So umet aviv shel hatan. All right. So the father of the hatan died, or immaha shel kala, right?
Yeah. מכניסים את המת לחדר.
Okay, explain to me what the theory is, and we studied this last time. But you explain to me either what the theory of מכניסים את המת לחדר means.
I don't remember.
I don't think I remember.
Why would you be מכניסים את לחדר?
Like a separation, so you could continue the celebration.
There is a mitzvah, okay? There is an obligation. Lo lehalin et hamet. You have to bury the deceased. So onen, his entire purpose when he's onen is to bury the deceased, right? So you can't do anything else. He's patur from the mitzvot aseh, and because he's osek the mitzvah of kiburat hamet. But here we don't want him to be osek in the mitzvah of kiburat hamet. What's the reason? Let him get married first. We say no, machnisin et hamet lecheder, and then get married.
Okay.
But why? Why don't you get married after you do the mitzvah? The wedding can wait an hour, can wait 2 hours, can wait half an hour, whatever, I don't know, however long it's going to take. Why machnisin et hamet lecheder ve'et hatan ve'et kala lachuppah? Do the opposite. Don't do halanat hamet. Bury the met, tikveru et hamet ve'tikveru lachuppah. You understand my question?
Yeah.
What's the reason? Mm-hmm. Anybody know on the group online?
Because the laws of Avelut would start to apply for him.
Exactly, correct. Because the minute that and let me just see if we can because the minute that they bury the deceased, immediately, and certainly if it's that day, at least if it's Yom Kippur and Yom Mitah, then the Averut Chala de Oraita. For the moment of Setimat Hagolal, for the moment that you so to speak, roll the stone over, it could be a niche in the cave, let's say, so there's a niche in the cave, let's use that, not necessarily, and then you roll the stone to seal off the cave, that niche where the dead body is. From that moment, the Avilut starts. So from the moment the Avilut starts, you cannot be sameach in simchat chatan nekala, right? So in order to prevent the Avelut from formally starting, because the laws of Avelut don't apply to the onen is asur bebasar, the onen is asur beyayin, patur meha mitzvot, Again, I'm just saying this just so you know the halacha. I'm not saying because Shulchan Aruch Rambam doesn't bring this, or then according to Shulchan Aruch is also asur b'chlisa. Rambam does not make Pesach like that, but I'm making you aware of it so that so that you're just aware of this particular machloket. Be that as it may, but the avelut does not formally start. Okay, so machnisin et hamet lecheder v'tihatan v'takalla lachuppah. Okay, continue reading. Okay.
ובועל בעילת מצווה ופורש.
Okay, it's fine. And he has Bo'el Be'la Mitzvah, he has to be with her. And Poresh, okay, that's it. Now he's Poresh. So now that the Shiv'at Yemei Mishteh started. Now, the Shiv'at Yemei Mishteh was one of the takanot of Moshe Rabbeinu. So Moshe Rabbeinu tiken, there's going to be Shiv'at Yemei Mishteh. So it's midivrei sofrim. But the fact is that right now, he is in the Shiv'at Yemei Mishteh. They are in the Shivat Yemei Mishteh. Now, once the Shivat Yemei Mishteh started, the Avelut is not going to push away the Shivat Yemei Mishteh. Just like, and I said this previously, give me an example of how Avelut is not going to push away Simcha.
Like Pesach.
Pesach, right? Exactly. Person started Pesach. After he started Pesach, somebody died, and then he buried him. He had to bury him because obviously, okay, so he buried him. All right, he's not going to start the Avelut. Why? Because he's involved now in the mitzvah of Pesach, and Pesach doesn't finish till whenever. You understand? So similarly here, the Shivat Yemei Mishteh, they suspend the Avelut until the Shivat Yemei Mishteh finish. Understood you understand the thing? So Benohek Shivat Yemei Mishteh. And now that the Shivat Yemei Mishteh is finished, so that impediment is removed. And now starts the Shivat Yemei Avelut, just like if a person, somebody died again on Pesach, or it could be on Sukkot, the minute the holiday finishes, they immediately nohagim Shivat Yemei HaMishteh. Shivat Yemei Avelut. Okay.
בכל אותם הימים הוא ישן בין האנשים ואשתו ישנה בין הנשים.
Okay, now during that time period, very interesting. The Baraita says, and we're going to examine this later. The Baraita says, "Hu yoshen ben ha'anashim." He has to be sort of asleep with shomerim, guards. Okay, ve'ishto yeshena ben ha'anashim, and she's going to have guards. Meaning, strange law. Normally, it's not so. Normally, a person is with his wife for the first time. And they can be, together. They don't need shomerim. Obviously, they don't have to be together physically, but they don't need shomerim. Here they say no, because of the avelut, they need to have shomerim. So this is one of the topics that we're going to go looking at today. Why do they need the shomerim? What's the relationship between avelut and the shomerim? You understand the question? Okay. Continue. This is all part of the same baraita.
וכן מי שפרסה אשתו נידה, הוא ישן בין האנשים והיא ישנה בין הנשים.
Okay, another law. If a woman pirsa ishto nida, the person got married. Okay, they broke the glass. Everybody's happy, fantastic. Okay, they had the kiddushin. They had the chuppah, the nisuin, yichnisa la-chuppah, and now they're going to be together. She says, "I'm sorry, I just became nida." Okay, happens. So pirsa ishto nida, he can't be with her, obviously. Okay, it's a sur karet. So now we say what? Since they were never together before, hu yoshen ben ha'anashim, vehi yeshena ben ha'nashim. So this is a special law, nothing to do with Avelut. There's a special law of Nidah. Normally, husband and wife, there's no law of Yichud. There's no law that says, husband can't be with his wife. This is the one exception. Hu yoshen ben ha'anashim, ve'hi yeshena ben ha'nashim, mi shepirsa ishto Nidah. I want to bring to you, I'm going to get the Rambam, give me a moment, because I want to read to you the halakha. So you see this. It's in Hilchot Isurei Bi'ah. I believe it's at the very end. Give me a moment. Hilchot Sefer Kedusha, Hilchot Isurei Bi'ah, Perek Kaf Bet, Halacha Aleph. Okay. אסור להתייחד עם ערווה מן העריות. One of the great laws is the law of Yichud, because when a person follows the law of Yichud, it prevents the person from doing an Averah, right? So אסור להתייחד עם ערווה מן העריות בין זקנה, בין ילדה, שדבר זה גורם לגלות ערווה. And then it has a few exceptions. You see here what the halacha is? Normally, if a woman is niddah, there's no isur. I mean, there's isur for the husband to be with her, but there's no isur of yichud. You understand? I know they said lishvah when the Ethiopians came to Israel. I think this was in the 90s, early 90s, as I recall. So there was a question as to whether or not they're Jewish, not Jewish, arguments, do we accept them, not accept them. So one of the things that was brought as shevach for them, and I'm not expressing my opinion on the matter. I have my opinion. I'm just like to express it. It's whatever was done, so I'll leave it at that. But the point is that one of the things that was brought is that they're so machmirim on the laws of niddah that when the woman is niddah, she's put like in a closet or something. I don't know, a small room. I mean, I don't even know if it's a closet or maybe it's a small room, but they can't even be together. Yani, you see the level of humrah is, wow, like it's just, and you're going to say they're not Jewish. So now the truth is that's not the halacha though. There is no yichud for ishto niddah. That's just not. So the answer is, wow, not wow, but it's just not the halacha. Number one. Number two, and again, I'm not saying this is so or don't make inferences, but yeah, the Coptic Christians had certain rules that were similar to that. So I'm not saying they're Coptic Christians. That, again, I'm trying to be very circumspect in the way I speak about this, because what happened. But the point being, you don't bring the ayah from the Coptic Christians that, wow, this is a beautiful law, look at the Qumrah. No, I think rather the other way. The question is, why do you follow the Coptic Christians and not the halakha? That's a question that I would rather ask. So there is no law for niddah, meaning niddah with ba'ala, right? But here now, and this is the law. V'chatan shepirusah ishto niddah. But there was one exception, and that's the exception of our Gemara, that if before he was with her, again, they did the chuppah, everything was good, and they're about to go home, and she says, "I'm sorry, this is not going to be tonight." So hatan sheprisa ishto nida kodem sheyivol asur litached ima. You understand the reason? And the reason is obvious, because they were never together. They just got married. Of course, they want to be together. Normally, we say, okay, she's nidah, control yourself, and that's it. Here, they just got married. So that's why there's a law of Yehud. Elahi yashena ben hanashim, v'hu yashen ben ha'anashim. Understand? But then Rambam finishes, and he says, v'im ba aleha bi'a rishona ve'achakach mitmet, if he was with her, and then she became niddah, there's no more law of Yichud. You understand the law? So the law of Yichud, the law that says that a husband can't be with his wife in the same room without shomrim, let's say, without shomerim, is, again, the law of our baraita, hu yoshem ben ha'anashim, ve'yeshena ben ha'nashim, in the context of niddah, only applies if they were never together before. And therefore, when she's niddah, we're going to be extra mahmirim and say, no, shomerim. Okay? Mm-hmm. All right. Let's continue the baraita, please. Read Aiki.
ואין מונעים תכשיטים מן הכלה כל 30 יום.
And finally, even though she's technically she is, she's avela, let's say. Okay, why? Because it's important that she be beautiful for her husband. I'm going to get Hilchot Zemanim. For those of you who have the Harambam, I'll get Hilchot Zemanim, Shevitat Asor. I want to show you the law there. Let's similar to this law. And of course, I didn't mean Hilchot Zemanim, I meant Sefer Zemanim. I apologize. Sefer Zemanim, Hilchot Shevitat Asor. Let's see if I can find it. Okay. Here we go. Hilchot Shevitat Asor. Shabbat, Keruvim, and here it is. Okay. If you look at Perek Gimel, Halacha Aleph. Okay, Perek Gimel Halacha Aleph. Now, well, actually, for a moment, the Isurim of Yom Kippur is, of course, Achila, Shetiya, Ne'ilat HaSandal, Tashmish HaMita, Lechisa. Okay, so these are the 5 Isurim of Yom Kippur. Now it says, Harambam says here, Asur Yochos B'Yom Kippurim. Ben Bechamin, this is again Perek Gimel, Halacha Aleph. Ben Bechamin, Ben Besoren. So on Yom Kippur is forbidden to wash yourself at all, whether the water is cold or whether it's hot, it doesn't matter. Ben Kol Gufo, Ben Ever Ehad. Right? Also, even a just small, just your finger, for example, it would be Asur. Afilu Esba Ketana. Even like one finger, to immerse your finger, your pinky, in the water would be forbidden. But here it says, "V'hamelech v'hakala rochasin et penehem." Kala kedei shelo titkaneh al ba'ala. Right? V'hamelech kedei sheyera'eh beyofyo. Shene'emar melech beyofyo tehezena einecha. So, and we're going to discuss the kala, we're not going to discuss the melech. The kala is allowed to wash her face because we don't want her to appear unappealing in the presence of her husband because they just got married. So again, the Chachamim were very particular about ensuring that the woman doesn't appear ungroomed or ugly or somehow in a way where her husband would be repelled by her. So they say she can clean. And it says that now, what did we say in the, so for how long is she considered a kala, that even though it's Yom Kippur, she can still wash her face or wash her, it's Acheloshim Yom, for 30 days from the wedding. So here, what does it say? Ve'en mone'in tachshitin min hakala. Normally, one of the things that a woman does who's avela, we'll see this later on in the sugya, she wouldn't put on her makeup. She wouldn't do her hair. Here, because they just got married, we're saying that she may do her makeup and she may prepare her hair for 30 days. So just like a kala is allowed to wash on Kippur within 30 days of becoming a kala is also allowed to beautify herself with makeup and fix her hair within 30 days of the avelut, notwithstanding that normally she would not do this. You understand the law? Okay, let's continue.
בין כך ובין כך לא יבעול.
לא יבעול. Now it says, בין כך ובין כך לא יבעול. לא בערב שבת. I'm sorry.
לא בערב שבת ולא במוצאי שבת.
Okay. And that's a topic that we're not going to study today. מדוע לא יבעול בערב שבת או במוצאי שבת. Okay. But that's a beraita. So you see this beraita again, you see the rhythm of the sugya. The previous sugya brought the statement of Rav Plisda. And then it ends with Tanya Rav Plisda, and it brings this beraita. Now we're going to analyze this beraita, right? So this is going to be the third beraita that we're analyzing in the sugya. The first baraita that we analyzed was on the top of Gimel Amud Bet, Mipnei Ma Amru Betula Nised Liyom Revi'i, and that was Lov Shakedu. The second baraita that we analyzed in this sugya was in Gimel Amud Bet at the bottom of the page. And now this third baraita, which is in Dalet Amud Aleph, now we're going to analyze this baraita. And really, you see it so. And by the way, each one of these analyses is a different part in the sugya. So in my map that I'm preparing of the sugya, each baraita and its analysis is a section in the sugya, part 1, part 2, part 3. So this formally would probably and likely be part 3. So now we read the baraita, and now let's read the analysis of the baraita. Shalomo.
Yeah.
Read the continuation. So hold on 1 second. I just want to get my notes. I know I have notes somewhere that's related to this. I believe I do. Okay, I can't find it, but okay. It doesn't matter. Okay, let's do it. Amar Mor. Amar Mor. When you have when you brought a baraita, and then you're going to introduce a quotation from the baraita that you already quoted, you say Amar Mor. Mor means sir. Now what happened? Let me explain. In the yeshiva, how would they quote a baraita? So that the yeshiva would have professional tannaim. The professional tannaim, they knew the baraitot be'al peh. Let's say you're an expert in Masechet Tosefta, in the Tosefta of Rabbi Chia, for example. So the Tana would come, and he would recite be'al peh the baraita for the purposes, of course, that the yeshiva wants to analyze the baraita, and then you would say Amar Mor. Amar Mor means sir, you said. A very respectful, very formal, meaning the Tana just said. You understand what Amar Mor means? Because we're now going to be quoting the baraita and analyzing it. So we're saying, sir, you just said the following. And then we're going to analyze the content of that thing. I think I mentioned last time that when Rav Nitronai Hannasi, he, just 1 second. Yeah, he came to Spain in the year 770. And Shemuel Hanagid records that when he taught the Gemara to the Hachamim in Lucena, that he taught it Be'al Peh, right? So, meaning he transmitted the Gemara Be'al Peh to the Hachamim. So this idea of transmitting things by heart, that was the formal, that's the idea of Torah Shebe'al Peh, is that the Torah Shebe'al Peh, the content is to be transmitted Be'al Peh. And the authority of the words contained in the Torah Shebe'al Peh is not by virtue of what's written down, but what's recited by the authoritative reciter. So in this case, it was Rabbi Nitronai Hannasi, who, by the way, is not to be confused with Rabbi Nitronai Gaon. Rabbi Nitronai Gaon was about, I think, more or less, maybe 150 years later, more or less. Rabbi Nitronai Hannasi, he came from Babylonia to Spain in the year 770. Okay, so that's when he came to Spain, as my memory is such. So here, Amar Mor. So you understand the idea of Amar Mor. You just recited the Beraita. You said as follows. Continue.
Can I
make a comment?
Of course, with pleasure.
So this Rab Natrona Nasi, I think he was complying with the actual meaning of the Talmudic rule, Debarim shebe'al peh, ata rashai le'omran, bichtav le'omran, meaning to transmit formally. And that's the law. One of the main reasons is you have to hear it, because the phrasing and the ta'amim, so to speak, and the emphasis doesn't come across in writing.
Interesting. First of all, Professor Chazak, I absolutely agree. Devarim shebe'al peh ata rashai le'omran bichtav, to transmit it. But that's interesting. So you're saying that in transmitting it be'al peh, I guess you're saying there would be a certain nagmeh, a certain melody, and that would help us also understand the meaning. Yes?
Yes. In fact, at the end of Masechet Megillah, in the printed final chapter. There's an imra that hakore belo ni'ma behashone belo zemira ala bekatub omer v'natati lachem chokim lo tovim u'mishpatim bal yichyu bahem. If you don't use the nachme, and the correct use says zemira, not zimra, right? Because it rhymes.
Nice.
That shows you itself. That's like a self-reference, right? The imra of Rabbi Yochanan, Amar Rabbi Shefatya, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, hakore belo ni'ma behashone belo zemira. It's like a song. You won't remember. The text will not stay with you if you don't use the tune. So that sheds light on why Devarim Shebe'al Peh Yatarasha Le'omran Biftav.
Very nice. Very nice. That's how and my father, Alav Hashem, he always emphasized whenever we studied the Gemara, he always emphasized the Nagme, and he would read it with me over and over again until it got into my mind. And also with the Mishnayot, we would say the Mishnayot, as per the melody of the Mishnayot, and finish the Mishnah. I don't know if you remember. Then you go to the next one, right? So right? It was always at the melody, but right? So very important when you study Mishnah Be'al Peh, you have to do with the melody. It's a mitzvah. I say it's a mitzvah. Part of the mitzvah of Talmud Torah is to have the right melody in the Mishnayot. So make sure that when you study it, you say it out loud, but with a nice nagmeh. Like it's mamash. It really is like a song, by the way. So it's a beautiful feeling. I used to study Mishnah Be'al Peh Erev Shabbat, and it brought me into Shabbat. And I would say it with the melody, and it would bring me into Shabbat. And it's sort of nice feeling. So for what that's worth, I'm just sharing that thought. Okay. Okay. So Amar Mo, Hu Yeshem ben Ha'anashim, Yeshem ben Ha'anashim. Okay, that's what the Tanna quoting this Baraita said. Chavo, Shalomo.
מסייע לרבי יוחנן.
Okay, this Baraita appears to support Rabbi Yochanan. Now, again, what did we say? We said, Hu Yoshem ben Ha'anashim, Vehi Yeshena ben Ha'anashim. Now, this particular aspect of the Baraita was not entirely clear. What's the reason that Hu Yoshem ben Ha'anashim, Vehi Yeshena ben Ha'anashim? So you say, Misaya le Rabbi Yochanan. This seems to support the thesis of Rabbi Yochanan. Chavo, read. What did Rabbi Yochanan say?
ואמר רבי יוחנן, אף על פי שאמרו אין אבילות במועד, אין אבילות במועד, אבל דברים של שנאה נוהג.
Okay, let me explain to you. אף על פי שאמרו אין אבילות במועד, אבל דברים של שנאה נוהג. Okay. According to halacha, there's no avilut in the moed. Now, maybe let's start with Shabbat. On Shabbat, there's no public, wrong book. There's no public, it's not wrong book also. There's no public display of avilut. I don't need a book, I'll tell you what it says. According to halacha, the avilut continues on Shabbat. There is avilut on Shabbat. It's one of the 7 days of the avilut, right? But you do devarim shebesin'ah. So in public, the avel is not going to have the public symbols of avelut on Shabbat, but when he's alone in his house, he would have the avelut. So for example, tashmish hamitah, it's avelut. That's devarim shebesin'ah. So therefore, he would not be with his wife on Shabbat, right? Devarim shebesin'ah, noheg, right? And so on. So that law for Shabbat, everybody agrees on that law. Let me explain to you the way it works on Yom Tov. Yom Tov and holiday. Chol HaMoed, Yom Tov, holiday. Moed. So, in the case of Moed, when a holiday, let's say somebody died before the holiday, and now during the 7 days comes Yom Tov, the Yom Tov completely annuls. It annuls the Avilut. That's it. It annuls the 7 days of Avilut. That's now. What if somebody dies on the holiday itself? Zero avilut on the holiday. None. Not the barim shebesin'ah, not the vashkim shebefarisah, nothing. There's no avilut. Avilut starts after the holiday. comes Rabbi Yohanan and he says, Af al pi she'amru, and I want to look at the source. Can you get me the last halak of the Mishneh Torah? This is, get the red one, but the one, Mishpatim Shofetim, right? I want to read it. Shalom, get me the magnifying glass. I can't see these letters here. Yeah, right. Give me one moment, gentlemen, and we will continue. Right. So, Af al pi she'amru, again, en avilut b'moed. Even though there is no avilut in the moed, but that's not entirely correct. According to the Yohanan, devarim shel sin'ah noheg. You would have devarim shel sin'ah. Now, I want to see what the source leads to. Perek Yod halacha gimel. Give me the thing, perfect. Perek, we'll open up Hilchot Evel. Perek Yod. Hilchot Evel, Perek Yod, Halacha Gimel. All right? Okay, I'm going to read it. Hargalim, Bechen Rosh Hashanah, V'yom HaKippurim, En Davar Middebrei Avilut Noheg Bahen. Nothing. Not on Rosh Hashanah, not on Yom Kippur, and not on any of the regalim. וכל הקוברת מתו אפילו שעה אחת קודם הרגל, או קודם ראש השנה ויום הכיפורים, בת לה ממנו גזירת של הסוף. A person buried his dead, let's say, before sunset. Tonight it's Rosh Hashanah, and before the sun sets, he buries his dead. He starts the Avilut, he started the Avilut before Rosh Hashanah. It was 1 hour, the whole of it was 1 hour, right? Or a minute even before sunset, doesn't matter. קודם ראש השנה, קודם יום הכיפורים. בת לה ממנו גזירת שבת. The entire 7 days of Avilut is annulled. Right? נמסה מונה לאחר ראש השנה ויום הכיפורים שלו שווה 20 יום, and therefore when Rosh Hashanah finishes, he would count only 23 days because it's 23 days left for the 30 days, right? Because you have 30. You have Gezerat Shiv'ah, that's Batla. You have Gezerat Shaloshim, that's still effective. It doesn't say a word about Devarim Shebesin'ah. If you look at the beginning of that chapter, he does bring Devarim Shebesin'ah in the context of Hilchot Shabbat, but nothing here. So Rabbi Yohanan says that no, there's Devarim Shebesin'ah, no egg. So they say, how do we explain Hu Yoshen ben ha'anashim ve'ishto yeshena ben ha'anashim? Now we said his father died, her mother died. One of them is Abel. So we said machnisa lachupah, and then you bury the manoach, and then you noheg shivat yemei mishteh. But then he says, even though you're noheg shivat yemei mishteh, chol otam hayamim hu yoshem ben ha'anashim ishto yeshena ben ha'anashim. Why? So they say, according to this explanation, because devarim shebesin'ah noheg, meaning this beraita affirms the opinion of Rabbi Yohanan that devarim shebesin'ah noheg b'moed. Now, I want to tell you that I looked at the Shita Mekubeset, and he brings different explanations. And honestly, when I studied this with my father gave a slightly different explanation to this tarikh. I'm aware. I know. I think the explanation that I gave is la'aniyut da'ati, the one that makes the most sense to me. Chacham Aaron, I'm not sure if you thought about it or if you have an opinion about it, but you're certainly welcome to, if you want to add or to subtract. but I'm just letting you know the way I study this personally.
Yeah, no opinion at the moment.
Okay. Fair enough. So I'm just letting you know that there was another explanation to this Gemara, but I gave you the explanation that I gave you. All right, let's continue. Darash Rabbi Yosef Pere de Rabba Bishemet de Rabba. So this isn't the famous Rabbi Yosef, who was the Rosh Yeshiva of Fom Bedita. This is rather the Rabbi Yosef, who is the son of Rava, who is the Rosh Yeshiva of Mechoza. So his son was Doresh. Now let me explain to you, when you see Darash in the Gemara, as I said already before, I think I said this a few weeks ago, the word Darash means this was a public class. Because the yeshiva was not open to everyone. The yeshiva was not open to everyone. It was not, free for all. Anybody who wants to come into the yeshiva and study, come, kol haba baruch haba. No, it was actually closed. Only the talmidim who were worthy were allowed to study. Right? The truth, the Rabban Gamliel de Yavne was very makpid on this. Kol talmid she'eno hagun. If a person is not hagun, you can't enter the yeshiva. Then when the Bir Azab and Azariah became the Rosh Yeshiva, they opened it up a little more, but they didn't open it up completely, right? It wasn't, but nevertheless, so the standards changed. Now, Darash Rav Yosef, from time to time, the Hachamim would give a derasha. Normally, the derasha was given in front of the office of the Resh Galuta. Right, so that was like the municipality of the Jewish people. Right, the Resh Galuta was the head, the Rosh Galut. He was like the king, or Mizera David HaMelech. So he was like the political representative of the Jewish people in Babel. So any matters that had to be dealt with at the communal, governmental level, he was like the representative of the Jews. Now, the derasha, it was given in front of his office, so to speak, so like that the people would be able to attend and hear. So we have this Rabbi Yosef, he's giving a derasha, and he says as follows. He's talking about the law of Nida. He's talking about the law of Nida, and if a person marries a woman, and Pirsa Nida, and we said that in that case, Hu Yoshen ben ha'anashim vehi yeshena ben anashim. So that was the topic of the derasha. That was the topic of the lesson. And on this he says, Lo shanu ela shelo ba'al. When do we say Hu Yoshen ben ha'anashim vehi yeshena ben ha'nashim? Only im lo ba'al. Right? Aval ba'al. But if he was with his wife, Ishto yeshena imo. If he was with his wife previously, and then she was put at Pirsa Nida, there's no obligation for them to separate. You understand? Simple law. Again, when do we say that there is an obligation to separate? Lo shanu ela shelo ba'al. Im lo ba'al. Pirsa Nida, lo ba'al, have to separate. Aval ba'al ishto yeshena imo. Okay. On this derasha of Rav Yosef, the Gemara asks a question. Vehacha debeba'al asekinan vekatane hu yoshen ben ha'anashim vehi yeshena ben ha'nashim. Now look at the just 1 second, please. Hold on. Look at the beraita. Right, 1 second. Yeah. Right. והאחד דבעל הסכינן, וקטנה הוא יושב בין האנשים וישנה בין האנשים. Yeah. So there why is there a contradiction between the words of Rav Yosef and the words of the Baraita? Again, the Baraita said, let's look at it one more time. The Baraita
say because of Bo'el Ba'ilat Mitzvah Foresh, and then the Chol Otan Hayamim,
yeah.
Hu Yashem ben HaNashim, V'ishto Yeshna ben HaNashim. Whereas,
yeah.
in the statement of Rabbi Yochanan, Devarim Shebesim'an Noheg, and Rabbi Yosef Bered Rava says, that's only Shelo Ba'al.
I see the way you're expanding it. Interesting. You're connecting the Derasha of Rav Yosef with the statement of Rabbi Yochanan. Am I understand?
Yes, and I think by itself in Eretz Yisrael, it may not have had this diuk, but the way we received it here in Pumbedita, which is our sugya,
yeah.
we assume, correct or incorrect, but we assume that we're processing it through this Derasha of Rabbi Yosef Bered Derava, so we're imputing that could be a later change to the Gezerah.
Yeah.
We're interpreting it as if Rabbi Yochanan means that. So that condition is imputed into the statement of Rabbi Yochanan. That's how I'm reading it.
I understand, but the difficulty I have with that is, okay, so you're saying that it really has nothing to do with the Baraita? Or am I misunderstanding you? Meaning the Baraita that says Hu Yoshen ben ha'anashim, vehi yeshena ben hanashim, right?
Yeah.
But it says, but the Gemara says, ve'ha'achad beba'ala sekinan.
Yeah, that's the question. Because we said Nisayah le Rabbi Yochanan.
Right.
But Rabbi Yochanan, via the Derasha of Rabbi Yosef Bered Derava, says Lo Shanu Ella Shelo Ba'al. So it seems we mean Devarim Shebesin'ah Noheg is a separation in the sleeping, it seems, right? And then Rabbi Yosef Bered Derava says, no, yes, but that only applies Shelo Ba'al.
Hevanti. Okay. All right. So let me repeat this for the actually Chacham Aaron, read the Gemara and explain it from Darash Rabbi Yosef to the end of to the end of the page, please.
So Darash Rabbi Yosef Bered Derava Mishime Derava Lo Shanu Ella Shelo Ba'al Aval Ba'al Ishto Yeshena Imo. So by saying Aval Ba'al Ishto Yeshena Imo, we understand that the Gezerah means you don't sleep together.
Yeah.
Shelo Ba'al. And so that's somehow how Rabbi Yosef Bered Derava is interpreting about Devarim Shebesin'ah Noheg.
Yes.
That's a leap, I understand, that's a leap, but that's the way we read it in Pumbedita.
Yes.
Ve'ha'acha dib'ba'al asikinan ve'chatane hu yoshen ben ha'anashim ve'ishto yeshena ben ha'nashim
Yeah.
ki ka'amar Rabbi Yosef asher piresa ishto mita.
No, that was the answer.
Yeah.
Kikamar Abu Yosef, Kikamar, when Rabbi Yosef said what he said, the law of Lo Shanu Ela Shelo Ba'al, Apirsa Ishtonita. Right. That in the case of Shepasam, and you want to finish off the sentence, and then I'll take over from where you leave off. When Rabbi Yosef made the derasha, right, and he said that you don't have to give shomerim if Baal, right? You don't have to have shomerim in that situation. It appeared to contradict the Beraita because the Beraita said that whether Baal or lo Baal, you give them shomerim, right? So the answer is that was dafka in the law of Ever, not in the law of Nida. That in the law of Avlut, it's true. It doesn't matter whether Baal or lo Baal, we have to give them shomerim. But in the law of Nida, the Beraita, I wasn't talking about the law of Nida, meaning the Beraita would agree with Rabbi Yosef that in Dafka im lo Baal, we give them shomerim, but in Baal, we don't have to give them shomerim. Meaning there's a distinction in the Beraita between the law of Avlut, where we say, Ben Sheba'al, Ben Shelo Baal, we have to give them shomerim, and the law of Nida, which is im lo Baal, we give them shomerim. In Baal, we don't give them shomerim, right? So that's the thing. So Kika Amar, Apirsa Ishto Nida, right? Specifically in the case of Pirsa Ishto Nida. But if in the case of Avelut, Lo Kama. Yeah, all right. So now it says, Ha Vechen Kataneh. So now, the question is as follows. So you're saying that in the Beraita there's a distinction between the law of Avelut and the law of Nida. In the law of Avelut we say, Ben Shelo Baal, we give them shomerim. Hu Yoshem ben ha'anashim ve'yeshena ben hanashim. In the case of Nida, we say no. In the case of Nida, we say Im Baal, we don't give them shomerim. Im lo Baal, we give them shomerim. But if you look at the Lashon of the Beraita, it says Vechen. I'm going to go backwards. I found the Beraita, but I'm going to give you all a minute to find the word Vechen in the Beraita. Okay? hu yoshem ben ha'anashim ve'ishto yeshena ben ha'nashim. And then it says, Vechen mi shepisa ishto nida. What does Vechen mean? Vechen means the same situation that we aforementioned, namely, that we give them shomerim whether Baal or lo Baal. Vechen mi shepisa ishto nida. We give them shomerim whether Baal or lo Baal. That's what Vechen means. Vechen means there's an identification between what we just read and what we're reading now. So how can you say that you want to make a distinction between the law of Pirsa Ishto Nida, where im lo Baal we give him shomerim, im Baal we don't give him shomerim, and the law of Avelut, where whether Baal or lo Baal we give him shomerim. It says Vechen, it should be the same law. So ha Vechen kataneh. So let's go to He Amud Dalet Amud Bet. Hachi ka'amar Vechen mi shepirsa ishto nida velo Baal. So when you have the word vechen, it can mean in the same situation. So the same situation would be a problem, because then we would have to say that whether Pirsai Tonida or Pirsai Tonida, same situation in Avlut, we don't distinguish. Is also in the case of Nida, we shouldn't distinguish whether, I misspoke, whether Baal or lo Baal. In the case of Avlut, we said it doesn't matter whether Baal or Baal. Also in the case of Nida, it shouldn't matter whether Baal or lo Baal. That's what Vechen means. Vechen means it's the same situation. But Vechen can also mean that we're dealing with a similar result, right? Vechen can mean we're dealing with the same situation, in which case the situation of Pirsai Ishto Nida would be identical to the situation of the Avel. The same way in the Avel, whether Baal or lo Baal, the law is shomerim. In the case of Pirsai Ishto Nida, the law will be shomerim. But Vechen can also mean we have the same result, namely the result. The same way in the case of Avelut, the result is shomerim. Also in the case of Nida, you have a similar result. Similar result, and comes Rav Yosef and says, and when do you have that similar result? Keshebaal. You understand? Keshelo Baal, right? Keshelo Baal, you have the similar result. That's the chidush of Rav Yosef, that you would think the Vechen means it's the identical situation, and therefore both in the case of Avlut, whether Baal or lo Baal shomerim, also in the case of Nida, whether Baal or lo Baal shomerim, comes Rav Yosef and says, no, that's what the Vechen means. Vechen means the same result. And where? Namely, in the case of Pirsai Ishto Nida, the result would be the same, but on condition she lo Baal. In that case, you would have the same result. If you don't, if Baal, you would not have the same result. All right? All right.
So now how do we know, how would you know that from reading the Baraita? You would not.
You would not, and my father said, Alav Shalom, he actually said that this means, and we're going to see later on more indications, that this Baraita was not a very accurate Baraita, right? It's true, meaning there's certain, we're going to see additional issues with the Baraita. And this comes to the point that I said at the beginning of the class. We make Pesach Halacha like the Baraita, not because of the authority of the Baraita. We make Pesach Halacha like the Baraita because Rav Chisda said what he said, right? And you see, it's a certain faults in the Baraita. It's not, it's analyzed by the Gemara, and they have their analysis, and they give their perushim, and soon we're going to see additional perushim. But it's not a perfect, it's not a perfect formulation. Correct. All right. All right. So let's just summarize what we did until now. Okay. Actually, no. Hachikama. Let's read Hachikama. Hachikama. Vechen mish. You read it.
Vechen mish persa ishto nida velo baal. Right,
this was the intention of the Baraita, namely, Pirsai Ishto Nida velo Baal. In that case, we Hashem ben Anashim ve'Ishto Yeshena ben Anashim. Right, so that's it. All right, let's stop for a moment. What time is it?
9:16.
We'll stop for 2-3 minutes, and then we'll continue in the Gemara. Thank you. That was very good. Let's see. All right.
It could be an internal, it's not really a proof, but an internal evidence that the Baraita, V'chen mi shepirisa ishto nida, is like we're reading it now. Because the first Baba says, Bo'el be'ilat mitzvah. So that's Bo'el. This is lo ba'al. The third Baba is u'benkach lo yib'ol. It's a kind of a sequence. Bo'el, lo ba'al, benkach lo yib'ol. It seems it kind of fits because it's going through the various possibilities. The first possibility is Baal, the second is Lo Baal, and the third is Lo Yib'al in the future.
Interesting.
It seems like it's some kind of a rhyme or a sequence or something connected.
Let me read it now. Tanya kevate de Rav Chisda. הרי שהייתה פיתו אפויה, וטבחו טבוח, ואינו מזוג, ונתן מים על גבי בשר, ומת אבי של חתן ואמה של כלה. מכניסים את המת לחדר ואת החתן ואת הכלה לחופה. Okay, here's the first one. ובועל בעילת מצווה ופורש. Okay. ובועל בעילת מצווה ופורש. ונוהג 7 ימי המשתה. ואחר כך נוהג 7 ימי אבלות. בכל אותן הימים הוא ישן בין האנשים ואשתו ישנה בין הנשים. Okay. וכן מי שפרסה אשתו נידה, הוא יושן בין האנשים וישנה בין הנשים. ואין מונעים תכשיטים מן הכלה כל 30 יום. וכך ומכך לא יבעול. So that's the second one. I don't see 3, I see 2. What am I missing?
So the second one is וכן מי שפרסה אשתו נידה, and if we impute this הכי קטנה of ולא בעל into these words, we have like a 3, each element in the sequence of 3 contains the verb ba'al in some capacity.
That's very nice. I like that. It's an interesting idea. And comes Rabbi Yosef and says, Velo ba'al.
Yes, right.
Interesting. That's a very nice point.
Because it was bothering me where you got this imputing Hachika Amar, Velo ba'al. You're adding it out of thin air.
Interesting. That's very nice. That's an interesting idea. So you do agree, though, that the formulation of the Baraita is other than perfect because it should have had those words. But I see your point. So your point is that if you follow the rhythm of the Baraita, that would have have a much nicer balance. And that's what Rabbi Yosef is saying. Interesting. Okay.
Yes, and I would also add that Rabbi Yosef is Sinai.
Yes.
And many times, very rare in his generation, the third generation, for an Emorah to articulate for the first time a Baraita. But we have Tane, Rabbi Yosef, frequently.
Yes.
And I connect that because he is Sinai. So he knows all the sources. So in the way he understood the ma'ani of this Baraita, you have to have Velo Ba'al. The fact that the way we quoted it in the yeshiva, in Tanya Kevate de Rabbi Chisda, that doesn't matter because in Rabbi Yosef's own studies, it wasn't written anywhere, but he knew it that way.
That's interesting. That's an interesting point. Very interesting point. Yes, Rabbi Yosef was Sinai. Okay. All right, let's continue. So we are now at the beginning, or the top rather, of Daf Daled Amud Bet. All right. Lememra de Avelut, 3 lines from the thing. Shlomo, you want to read a little?
Okay. Lememra de Avelut.
De Avelut.
De Avelut.
Kilale minidda. All right. So we can infer from the previous, right, that Avelut, Kilale means from his perspective. Doesn't mean it's necessarily so, but from the perspective of the husband, right? Kilale, or the Avel, from the perspective of the Avel, he's less inhibited by the law of avelut. In his mind, the law of avelut is not such a big deal, right? We know that an avel is asur betashmish hamita. He's not allowed to be with his wife. And of course, a person who ishto is nida, of course, he's not allowed to be with his wife. Now, from the perspective of the avel, he would not be mezalzel in the law of nida, of course, it's kareh. But in his mind, avelut is kilale. Avelut is something that maybe he doesn't take as seriously. Now, the way we make this conclusion about his mind or the mind of the Avel is because we're saying that in the case of Avelut, whether Ba'al or lo Ba'al, we're going to tell him, no, you need Shomerim. You need Shomerim. Why would you do that? Well, you need Shomerim. It's asur for him to be with her. So why do you need Shomerim? Kilale. He might be mezalzel. But in the case of Nida, you don't need Shomerim in the case where Baal, because it's very hamur. You understand the reasoning of the Gemara? A man whose wife is Nida is inhibited. He's not going to talk, right? So we don't force him to sleep separately if Baal. But Avelut, it appears to be less of a deterrent than Nida, right? So that's why we need to have two separate, that's why we need to separate them, even if they were already together. Even if already Baal, we have to separate them, all right? So that's the inference that we make from the Baraita that we just quoted, okay? Again, Lememra, the Avelut, Kilale, Minida. Now we can only make this reference in view of the statement of Rav Yosef that says Lo Shanu Ella, right? Because so once we have the interpretation of Rav Yosef, we can make this inference. But והאמר רבי יצחק בר חנינא
והאמר רבי יצחק בר חנינא אמר רב הונא כל מלאכות שאישה עושה לבעלה נדה עושה לבעלה.
Okay, let's read it. I'm going to read it and then you're going to read it after me. Okay, first me. כל מלאכות שאישה עושה לבעלה נדה עושה לבעלה.
כל מלאכות שאישה עושה לבעלה נדה עושה לבעלה.
Okay, and the statement is going to continue, but let's do it step by step. Any melacha that a woman does for her husband, a nida does for her husband, meaning there's no. Let me explain. When a woman gets married, when they get married, there are certain melachot that a woman is obligated to do for her, on behalf of her husband, right? Now, and we're going to see some of them in a moment. Now, this is part of so in Jewish law, marriage is defined. You know, in America, okay, I got married. Okay, let's go to Las Vegas and justice of the peace. But the marriage, it doesn't have any substance in the sense that it's not well defined, and that's a problem in the goy world, that there is a mitzvah for a goy to get married in the sense that, well, let me put it this way, it's forbidden for a goy to be with a goya unless they're married. That's one of the Shem Mitzvot Ben Enoah. Here, let me read that halacha. Okay, we don't have to read the halacha, but the point is that the problem with the goy marriage is it's not very well defined. Now, by us, we have the ketuvah. So ketuvah, it defines the respective responsibilities of the husband and the wife. One of the things the wife has to do, and I hope there's no woman listening now, and so on, but the wife has certain responsibilities to serve the husband in whatever manners that we'll see soon some of them, but that was just part of the responsibility. So the husband has to provide for her, the husband has to work, he has to make a parnasa. But one of the problems I have with the modern day Haredi world, I mean, there's many problems that they reform Judaism in very bizarre ways. I mean, it's really just a bizarre reformed system of laws where they this and that. So one of the problems is that really, according to halacha, it's up to the husband to support the wife. Now, in many of these communities, the wife works and the husband is in the kollel studying. Or studying, hopefully studying, maybe not studying, I don't know what, that's a different story. Now, fine, you can do that, but you have to stipulate it in the ketuvah. I never saw a ketuvah that stipulates that, but maybe I'm mistaken. Right? But if you're going to have a system where the husband is going to be studying in the kollel and the wife is going to work, fair enough, stipulate in the ketubah that the husband does not have to support his wife, doesn't have to give him misonot, doesn't have to, I don't know, whatever. She'era kesuta. And then there's an interesting question. Can you be matneh? Can you make a tanai like that in the ketubah? The Torah says, she'era kesuta ve'onata. Now the question is, can a person be matneh on ma shekatuv b'Torah? Well, in Dinei Mamonot, yes. In other things, no. I'll give you an example. Example is law of shikha. Okay, there's a law that says that if a person he's collecting the sheaves of wheat after he bundled the sheaves of wheat, he has them in the warehouse. He's take them now to be threshed. So he's going to collect the sheaves of wheat. If he leaves he leaves a sheaf of wheat behind. That's called shikha. According to halacha, that goes to the aniyim. Okay. A person now says, I'm collecting the sheaves of wheat. Al melad shema shani shocheach ani lokeach. He wants to make a tanai. The Torah says the shikha goes to the ani. He wants to make a tanai. No, I'm making a tanai now as I'm collecting the sheaves of wheat. And if I forget something, I'm going to come back and take it. That's called matneh al ma shekatuv b'Torah. Kol matneh al ma shekatuv b'Torah ten'o batel, except in Dinei Mamonot. The question I have is, if according to the Torah, she'eraha kesutaha ve'onataha, can he be matneh on that? Can he be matneh on she'erah? Can he be matneh on kesutah? Right? It's an interesting she'elah. Is that matneh on ma shekatuv b'Torah? So can you even have a ketuvah which says that the husband is going to be in the kollel and the wife is going to support him? And any of that. I mean, I didn't make the pesak one way or the other. I'm raising a problem. But certainly if the ketuvah is a standard ketuvah, and they sign the standard ketuvah, and then the husband goes to the kollel all day, and the wife is working, I don't know, from 9 in the morning to like 7 at night, coming home exhausted. I don't know if that would then violate the ketuvah b'vata'ut, and that would not be proper. But the point is that the beautiful thing about the ketuvah is that it stipulates the responsibilities of each one of them, and this, of course, gives a certain substance to the marriage. So it's not just like go to Las Vegas and have fun and go on honeymoon. There's responsibility, and when you have responsibility, then you have you produce good things. When you have no responsibility, you produce nothing. All right. So that's what it says. Kol melacha she'isha osa leba'alaha, nida osa leba'alaha. So just because she's nida doesn't mean she doesn't have to do work. I once saw a law. I don't remember where this law came from, but I think it was that when I forgot what, I think it was like the 8 days of Hanukkah, that when the Hanukkah is lit, the wife doesn't do any work in the house. Something like that. Okay, good law. Chavod.
חוץ ממזיגת הכוס והסעת המיטה
ורפיסת פניו ידיו ורגליו. Okay, let me explain this all. These three obligations of the wife are suspended. Meaning, a woman who is nidah, she has to do the regular thing, whatever the regular responsibilities are, but these three responsibilities, no. Because these three responsibilities are considered kind of personal, intimate, and therefore, if the woman were to perform these responsibilities for her husband, it could lead to bar minan, a violation of the nidah laws. So let's look at the three laws. Who's mezigat hakos? The first one is mezigat hakos. I'm going to explain that in a moment. Hasa'at hamita. Hasa'at hamita is to prepare the bed. I'll explain that also. Urchisat panav yadav velaglav, and to wash his face, his hands, and his feet. So these three melachot, she is Petul, she doesn't perform them during the time where the law of Midah applies. Meaning, from the moment that she sees blood until she makes tefillah in the mikveh, she does not perform these works. Let's start with Mizigat HaKos. And even before that, there's different ways. There's two different ways that the Hachamim ordered things. There sometimes it's zu ve'en tzarich lomar zu. Zu ve'en tzarich lomar zu means I'm going to bring a lower case, and of course if I bring the lower case, then you know that a more severe case also is such. So here it says, here it's zu ve'en tzarich lomar zu. It's Mizigat HaKos. She can't pour water into his wine. Okay, we'll explain that in a moment. If she can't pour water into the wine, obviously Hasat Amitah, she's fixing his bed, she's fixing her bed, she's fixing it, getting it ready. Of course, Zu ve'en tzarich lomar zu. If I said Mizigat HaKos, I don't have to say Hasat Amitah. Urapisat panav ve'raglav, panav yadav ve'raglav, there she's actually touching him. Obviously, en tzarich lomar zu. You understand? So this is Zu ve'en tzarich lomar zu, right? Then there's lo zu avzu. Lo zu avzu is the opposite, where you start with a more severe thing, and then and so it would have been the opposite. You would have said the hisab panav yadav veraglav, right? Lo zu avzu, and then you would have said hasat amitah. You would have said Mizigat HaKos. So you have both types of orders in the among the Hachamim. So here it's zu ve'en tzarich lomar zu. Now let's start with Mizigat HaKos. So I think the best way to understand this is the Japanese have a tea ceremony. I believe that it's called sabo. And this Japanese tea ceremony...
Sorry, I think it's called cha no yu.
Cha no yu?
Cha is the word for tea in the Orient. Like in Hindi, it's chai. Yeah. Cha no yu is the Japanese tea ceremony.
Cha...
So CHA-NO
U.
YU.
Cha no you. Thank you. Okay, noted.
They actually depicted one, if you remember, it's a very old movie, but about that pilot who's Portuguese who goes to Japan. I forgot the name of it.
I'm not familiar with that, I guess.
So he goes to Japan and he works for the emperor during the shogunate. I forgot the name of it, but...
Interesting.
A tea ceremony between a Japanese man and his wife.
Interesting. Between a husband and wife. So I think...
It was specifically because they were not getting along. So you request a tea ceremony to know whether the wife is still loyal to you or not.
Yes. And that's exactly the point. Wow, that's very interesting.
Shogun. The name of the series, television, was Shogun.
Shogun. So that's exactly what Mizigat HaKos was. It was considered a romantic act. And in Japan, as you said, serving tea, depending on how the tea is served and how she acts and what she does, is an indication of her feelings towards her husband or the person who is receiving this tea. That's right. And I think what I just said is consistent with what you were saying.
Absolutely, and also the Chachamim, because I'll never forget it because of what the Chachamim say. There's an instance reported either in the Talmud or some other rabbinic text. Mazra lo kos pashur. She poured for the husband a lukewarm cup. Now, you didn't heat the wine, right? So pashur doesn't refer to the temperature of the wine being drunk. It refers to her emotional state or how she acted romantically or not romantically towards the husband. And kos pashur means he didn't get the reconciliation he was looking for or the confirmation he was looking for. Same thing happened in Shogun. The Japanese man did not get what he was looking for. She was kind of saying, I don't like you anymore.
Very interesting. That's fascinating. It's fascinating how among the Japanese you have something so analogous to what we have, because there was three situations. One situation is shafcha kos lefanav. Shafcha kos lefanav literally means she poured the tea, or the wine. But again, like you said about kos pashur, I don't think shafcha kos lefanav literally means she poured the wine. I mean, she spilled the wine. but rather she acted in a way during the ceremony which would indicate, get lost, bum, I want to have nothing to do with you. That's Shavcha Kos Lefanav. The other extreme, which is Mezigat Kos, that's what this is talking about, Mazga Kos Lefanav. Mazga Kos Lefanav means she did it in the proper way, indicating love and affection. But then, and what you were referring to was Mazga Kos Pashur, exactly. My father said exactly the same thing. Because they try to explain, what is it, Kos Pashur? What do you mean? That it's not cold, it's wine. What's Ma'inyan Pashur? He said, yeah, that it was like subtly indicating not interested. This isn't going to work. Not as dramatic as Shavcha Kos Lefanav, but right, Mazga Kos Pashur. You understand? So the way they would, so apparently there was something similar to the Japanese tea ceremony, and the way that she would prepare the cup, because they would bring the wine out of the barrel. Now the wine out of the barrel was very strong, it was very concentrated. So there was a certain ceremony how she would prepare the wine for him, put in water, and depending on how she did it, it could either be she's angry at him, or she's pashur, whatever, ambivalent, or she loves him. And that was the way to express, so today you have the soap opera, everybody's yelling at everybody and, screaming and this and that. The Japanese, more Beni Adam, instead of screaming and yelling and hysteria and, this, the way she prepares the tea is indicating whether she likes him or not. And same thing here with the Gemara. So now you understand why Mezigat Kos was forbidden. You understand exactly? Because Mezigat Kos was considered a romantic act of the wife or the husband. All right? But I don't have a watch, so let me know the time, please.
9:38.
Okay, when we get to 5 to 10, tell me.
Okay.
All right. I think also Hasa'at Amita, apparently there was a certain romantic element to the way she would fix the Mita also. It wasn't just fixing the Mita. Let me get the book of Mishle. Give me a moment. I think there's something similar there, I believe. Let's see, where it is, my Mishle. Here it is. Okay. Yeah. Give me a moment. Okay. Yeah. There's a story in Mishle where a young man is captured, ensnared by a woman, right? And there you have this type of description. Give me a moment. Let me see. Right, it's in Perek Zayin of Mishle. It says that Ki b'halon. I'm sorry, give me the magnifying glass. Yeah, here it is. Okay. Lishmorcha me'isha zara min nochriya amareya hechelika. Right? Lishmorcha me'isha zara min nochriya amareya hechelika. So, Benesha pe'elev yom be'ishon layla ba'afela. Right? So the young man, he says, what can possibly go wrong with this? It's beautiful. She loves him. She really loves him. Nobody loved him before. But here, there's a pasuk here, the pasuk that I was looking for. If you look at Mishle, Perek Zayin, pasuk Tet Zayin, right? And it says here, I'm going to look at Rabbeinu Sa'adia Gaon in a moment, but it says, Marbadim Rabati Arsi Hatuvot Etun Misraim. I think this is Hasa'at Amita. Right? The Eines, of course, is the bed. And she's saying how she decorated the bed with beautiful cloth and linen. Right?
Yeah, and even the next pasuk, which may refer to her own sin, I believe.
Yes.
Like Shir HaShirim, that's even much more graphic in a sense.
Yes. Nafti mishkavi mor. It says ahalim mor.
Like more ve'ahalot in Shir HaShirim.
Right, exactly. But here it says
Eloi.
Yeah. But I don't know if I'm reading it correctly. This is more, maybe there's a misprint in this book. Here it's written Mor Ahalim. Mor Ahalim. Vekinnamon. So you see, she put some sort of beautiful scent on the bed. Right? So that's a Sa'at Amita. Isn't that interesting? So it's, when you study these things, it's good to really understand what exactly it's talking about. Because why can't she set the bed, so Hasat Amita, right? It's right. So that was okay. So the first thing we understand, the first one was cha no you.
You're also right. I put it in the chat. It's also known as chado. So chado is the way of the tea. I knew old-fashioned. There's three graphemes there. Chano you, but it's also chado. Which some people make to sado. They, I'll declare cha elasab.
Evanti.
Cha do means mahalach, like path, right? So chado, the way of the tea.
Interesting. That's good. Okay. And then that was another thing. So what they would do is the guy comes back home at night and he's all dusty don't forget back then everything was agricultural. So he was working outside in the field and she would bring a nice basin of water. There was no running water. So she would prepare the water ahead of time, probably heat it, maybe soaps, and she would wash his feet, his face, his hands, right? So again, it's something that a wife would do for her husband, right? So these three things, when the woman is nida, can't do these things, okay? Okay, so that was a statement of Rav Huna. Again, kol melachot she does except for these three things, right? Ve'ilu, I can read ve'ilu be'avelu tanya.
ואילו כבאבלו תניא, אף על פי שאמרו אין אדם רשאי לקוף את אשתו להיות כוחלת ולהיות פוסקת באמת. פוקסת באמת.
לא, ולהיות פוקסת באמת אמרו, you understand?
ולהיות פוקסת באמת אמרו, מוזגת לו הכוס, ומסעת לו המיטה, ומרחסת לו פניו, ידיו ורגליו.
So, now we have a baraita that says as follows. אין אדם רשאי לקוף את אשתו להיות כוחלת ולהיות פוקסת, right? So now, let's say there's avelut, right? Now the man, he wants his wife to look beautiful. So the baraita says, and we're going to read it in a moment in Rambam, Perek Bet. Interesting. Is it even there? It says Perek Bet Hilchot Evel, but I don't know if it's there. Give me a moment. I'm opening up Hilchot Evel, Perek Bet. Yeah. They have it like on the side here in Mishpat, Ner Mitzvah, but he has it like in parentheses. So let's see. Maybe it's not there. Again, Perek Bet. Interesting. Let's see. What is there in parentheses? Okay. Okay, look again. Perek Bet, halacha he. אשתו הנשואה, אף על פי שהוא מתאבל עליה, אינו מתאבל עמה. We're going to read that soon. So where is... No. I don't see anything here about makeup. Okay. All right. I don't see anything here about makeup. Nothing. Okay. So he wants her to look beautiful. He wants her to be. Let me explain what kohelet. Kohelet means they would put a blue shade on the eyes. Right, so beautiful, like I guess like what do you call that? Mascara, maybe? I'm not sure what you call that in English. So put something beautiful on the eyes.
That's it exactly.
Mascara, okay. Veliot pokeset. Let me explain what pokeset means. they used to build the hair, braid the hair in a nice way. I think there's an expression, zonot hamefarkesot zu et zu. They would, meaning the whores, they would help each other. There was there's a Gemara in Shabbat with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. I just realized we didn't say the Omer. Let's say the Omer, okay? We should say the Omer.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו על ספירת העומר היום 45 יום לעומר שהם 6 שבועות ו3 ימים הרחמן יחזיר עבודת בית המקדש במקומה במהרה בימינו אמן. So there was a Gemara in I think Shabbat Lamed Gimel. It brings a famous order of Bishmar Yochai, and it says there that one of the Chachamim in the yeshiva, Yehuda ben Gerim, he spoke not nicely about the Bishmar Yochai, and then when the Bishmar Yochai got out of the cave, he said something to the following effect: that afilu zonot even zonot mefarkesot zu et zu. One whore helps the other whore braid her hair. You know, the Chachamim can't show respect to each other, right? So just kind of a funny, I thought it was a very funny thing. So that's what Zonot HaMefarkesot Zu et Zu means, that they help each other with their hair. Like, you know, you see that sometimes women do that very affectionately, they try to help you, right? So they're braiding each other's hair. So he says, I want you to braid your hair, make it beautiful, or I want you to put the mascara on your eyes. To make it beautiful. So, En Adam Rashai Lakuf et Lakof. En Adam Rashai Lakof et Ishto Liot Kohelet Veliot Pokeset. Be'emet Amru, but so he can't force her to do that. She cannot force her to do that during the Avelut. But Be'emet Amru, I'm not sure what Be'emet Amru means. I know what they say, but I have to think about it a little more carefully. So Be'emet Amru means when you have an authoritative tradition on which there's no machloket. Okay, now, so why don't you call it Halakha Moshe Sinai? What's the difference between Be'emet Amru and Halakha Moshe Sinai? That's my question. I know Be'emet Amru appears in Masechet Shabbat, right? It also appears in Masechet Bava Mesi'ah. But what does it mean? Meaning, I know what it means, but what's the difference between Be'emet Amru and Halakha Moshe Sinai? And then Yodea, Sarich Iyun. But I'm letting you know that Be'emet Amru means if this is something that's agreed upon, there's no machloket, Be'emet Amru, that a woman who's Avela, Mozeget lo hakos, Umasat lo hamita, Umalcheset lo panav veraglav. So here we see that Avelut apparently is from the psychological perspective of the individual, the Avelut itself would inhibit the individual from being over on the Isur of Tashmish Habitah. Now here we're saying, therefore, that she can be Mozeget lo et hakos, and she can be Masad lo et hamita, she can be Malcheset lo panav veraglav. But in the case of Nidah, we said she might do those things. So it seems to be that which is more inhibiting, the Nidah or the Avelut? Apparently the Avelut, because you're saying that, no problem, she's no need to worry. Naturally, they would control themselves because of the Avelut, and therefore, yeah, you could be Mozeget lo et hakos. In the case of Nidah, we said otherwise. So here it seems that the Avelut is not Kilale. Here it seems that the Avelut is more Hamur. Before we said that the Avelut is Kilale. How do we know the Avelut is Kilale? Because we said that in the case of the Avel, we said that Ben Sheba'al, Ben Shelo Ba'al, they need Shomerim. Why? The Avelut is not inhibiting. They might make an Avelah. But in the case of Nidah, Im Ba'al, they don't need Shomerim. The heaviness of the law is enough to keep them apart. It's not going to be violating the laws of Nidah. Here, what do we see from what we just read? We saw that in the case of Nidah, אסורה בתשמיש, I'm sorry, אסורה במזיגת הכוס. אבל אבלה מותרת במזיגת הכוס. So now you're saying that the avlut is more inhibiting than the nida. You understand the question? Okay. So we're gonna continue now for another few minutes, and then we're gonna finish and continue next week. Next week, no. Next week it's. Let me ask you a question. Who wants to study Wednesday? When does Shavuot finish?
Tuesday night.
Tuesday night. I would consider either Wednesday or Thursday night if any of you want to do that. Thursday night? Maybe Thursday night, does that work?
Yeah.
Alina, okay, I'll announce it on the group chat. Okay. Lakashya kan be'avelut dida, kan be'avelut dida. Okay, so now. The difference here is whether it's avelut, his avelut, or her avelut. Very interesting. A husband, the man, if he's avel, he's less inhibited than the woman. Meaning, when a woman is avela, she would naturally be a little more inhibited. Now, if you look at the beraita that we just read, it says Tanya, af al pi she'amnu en ala masha lakof et ishto. Who's the avel in this case? The woman. The husband is telling his wife, I want you to put on makeup. I don't care that you're avela. She says, no way, I'm not doing it. Asul lirchos, I'm not washing my face, I'm not going to put on makeup. So we say, en ala masha lakof et ishto. So we're talking about the woman. So in the case of the woman, when the woman is avela, she's going to be inhibited by the avelut. Right? And therefore, mozeget lo et hakos, right? Masat lo et hamita, marcheset lo panav yadav raglav. But in the situation where the husband is avel, he may not be inhibited by the avelut, and therefore, in the baraita, met aviv shel hatan, meta imma shel kalla. In that beraita, we're going to be saying that when the beraita said that we have to put shomerim, hu yoshem ben ha'anashim v'yeshina ben ha'anashim, whether ba'al or lo ba'al, it doesn't matter. We have to have shomerim. That's because he's an avel, and if he's an avel, he might not be so inhibited by the avelut, and he might end up being with his wife, and that's where we have to put the shomerim. There's an obvious question. But first, before we get to the obvious question, let's just finish the answer. La kashya kan be'avelut dida, kan be'avelut dida. And this is the obvious question, and this is why I said before that this beraita was not so authoritative. Veha aviv shel hatan o imma shel kalla katane. But the beraita starts. It says, met aviv shel hatan, meta imma shel kalla. Now you're telling me no. No, it's bet aviv shel hatan. When do we say Hu Shem ben Anashim, Yeshem ben Anashim? He's avel, he's uninhibited. We have to put shomerim. But if it's her, if she's avela, it's a different situation. She would naturally be inhibited by the avelut, and you would not need shomerim. But it says, the beraita says, aviv shel hatan o imma shel kalla, right? Ki kataneh ashe'era. So they say, when the baraita says that met aviv shel hatan, met o imma shel kalla, it refers to every single law in the baraita, except for this one, except for the law of Hashem ben Anashim, v'Yeshera ben Anashim. That law only applies in the case where aviv shel hatan. It doesn't apply in the case of imma shel kalla. You understand? Right? So aviv shel hatan and imma shel kalla is ashe'era on the other laws. Right? I'm sorry. Thank you. All right. So I think we're going to stop here. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, gentlemen.
I have a question, but I think it's not
please.
exactly related to this sugya. But when the so-called gzera says, כל מלאכות שהאישה עושה לבעלה חוץ ממסגרת הכוס, how could we know that they took the law from these specific ceremonies and then expanded to any Mizigat HaKos or any Otzat Panav.
Oh, I see. So you're saying, why does it apply today to Mizigat HaKos? Right, that's what you're asking. Because today the Mizigat HaKos doesn't have the same symbolic significance. Is that the question?
And how do we could know that? Because from the words only, it's like Mizigat HaKos. How can we?
Right. I mean, look.
Yeah, I think he's referring also to the modern umrot on all kind of passing objects, including babies or the salt between a husband and wife. Bisman gataha.
Right.
And also from the words. Yeah. And also, how would you know from this phrasing that these are erotic ceremonies? Yes.
Right. I mean, that's why we want to have. Well, first of all, I'm not addressing the question of what they do today and the different things they do today. But I will address just the question of how do you know? I mean, you don't know. You need to have a good teacher. That's the truth. I have no other way of putting it. If you don't have a good teacher, you don't know. And thank God, Baruch Hashem, I was I don't know, some chesed. I don't know why somebody did chesed with Hashem, did chesed with me, and I had a very good teacher. So yeah, that's the only answer.
You could have said, you can do these three things, and what are these things? It's specifically this ritual, but it doesn't mention anything.
No, I mean, people. It's like saying that shado or sado in Japan. Everybody knows what it meant. You know, I mean, it's true that now we're a little removed from the Gemara. That's why my father always used to say that the Geonim understood the Gemara better than anyone because they were in the same. They spoke the same language. They were in the same culture. They were in the same physical buildings. So yeah, I mean, of course. Yes. Any other questions or comments?
I mean, you do have hints from the Shavchal Lo et HaKos.
Oh, yeah.
You wouldn't know, but once you understand there's something more going on here, you should be put on a duty of inquiry, right? You can't do the art scroll. Art scroll doesn't help you, right? You need the talqin, what we call, right? So at least you could know, though, if you're awake. I need someone to explain this to me because this is not clear.
Right, I mean, it's also, yes, and you just mentioned the word talqin, exactly. Like, how do you know that the aleph is an aleph? How do you know that the aleph of the kames is an a and not an e? Right? So you need a teacher. You need a teacher to teach you these things. Right? Okay, all right, gentlemen. So, Belina, then we'll figure out next week whether it's Wednesday or Thursday. Have a good night.
Thank you very much, Chacham.
All the best. Kol tuv, shalom aleichem. All right, it wasn't my best class, but we try. Can't always be. I'm going to shut the recording now.